Welcome back, student, in the classes of data manipulation and analysis. In data manipulation and analysis, we learn the concept of database. In that, we learn what is database, what is DBMS, what is users, what is languages, all. Now today, we learn architecture of the database. Before we start architecture, just see overview of the users. Database users means the person who can interact with the database are known as the database users. Database users are the DBA, naive users, application programmers, sophisticated users and specialized users. DBA is a database administrator and he is the one person which can define the schemas and overall design of your database. It provides some securities and it provides some facility to access and modify the database. Then naive users. Naive users are known as unsophisticated users which can interact with the system by using some permanent applications. Then application programmers. The application programmers are the computer professionals and which can interact with the system through the database manipulation language, through the queries, different types of manipulation queries. Then sophisticated users which can interact with the system by using SQL queries. And specialized users are also known as sophisticated users, but they are some specialized database applications users, and it is used some specialized database like expert system and knowledge base system. Then there are the database languages DDL, DML, TCL and DCL. There are 4 different database languages are there. First is the DDL, that is a data definition language which consists of the database definition queries commands, SQL commands, different types of commands which can use to change or alter the database definition, that is a create and alter table drop command which is available in DDL, data definition language. It is used to change and modify the structure of the database. Then DML, that is a data manipulation language. It contains the command which is used to change your database records, like if you want to change or insert or display your data from the database, then you can use different data manipulation language commands like select, insert, delete, update, etc. Then DCL, that is a data control language. It is used to control the data and giving some permission to the users, like grant and revoke are 2 different commands included in DCL, data control language. Then TCL, that is a transaction control language which is deal with the transaction of the database like commit, rollback and save point. There are 3 different commands included in TCL. Now the next topic, that is a database architecture. Database architecture is a database design, or database design is totally depends upon its architecture. Normally the client server architecture is used in the database. Now web servers and database servers are some types of components and which are connected with the network, and it provides how the user to connect with the database and how its request gets succeed. Users जो भी request डालेगा, queries डालेगा, वो कैसे सक्सीड होके आउटपुट दिखाएगा, वो टोटली डिपेंड होता है डेटाबेस आर्किटेक्चर पे. DBMS provide 3 different layers of architecture: 1-tier architecture, 2-tier architecture and 3-tier architecture. In 1-tier architecture, it is a single directly users communicate with the database. In 2-tier architecture, there are the client and server, different 2 layers are there. In 3-tier architecture, there are one more layer between a client and server. There is a 3 different layers to perform some queries and give the response to the users. Now, one-tier architecture. So, I already told you that one-tier architecture is what? It is directly available to the users, and users can directly use the database himself as well, which cannot use any extra tools or any extra end users to use particular database or particular data. And this one-tier architecture is used for development of the local application. In that local application, programmers directly communicate with the database and that give the quick response. So in the one-tier architecture, there is no layers between users and the application. There are direct communicate with the users and the applications. User डायरेक्टली डेटाबेस एप्लीकेशन से डायरेक्टली इंटरेक्ट कर सकता है, उसको दूसरी कोई भी लेयर्स और दूसरे कोई भी एप्लीकेशन की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगी, जैसे क्लाइंट और सर्वर की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. डायरेक्टली यूज़र इंटरेक्ट कर सकता है डेटाबेस से और उसको क्विक रिस्पॉन्स मिलेगा इन अ वन टायर आर्किटेक्चर. नाउ इन टू टायर आर्किटेक्चर, some client server technique is used. In two tier, some applications are available on client and which can directly communicate with the database, but at the server side. There are client and server. There is a one server are there and many more clients are there. So the client application are directly communicate with the database server. Now user interface and the application programs normally run on the client side only, but server side give the response and to provide the functionality like some query processing system and transaction management, and because of that it will provide some response to the client side, to the users. Now to communicate with the DBMS, client side applications establish the connection between the client and server through the server side. Now this is the architecture of two-tier database. Now in that client and server, two different layers are there. In the client side, user interface and the applications are there, and server side database systems are available. So user can interact with the applications and that applications need the response from the server. So server sides give the response to the user in the client side through the application. This is the client server architecture. In that, client side establish the communication with the server side through the database system, and server give the response to the particular application in client side. Now in three-tier architecture. Three-tier architecture contains one more layer between client and server. Now in client and server, in three-tier architecture, client cannot directly communicate with the server. In the two-tier architecture, see over here, client can directly connect with the server through the application, but in the three-tier architecture, client can't communicate directly with the server. It provides some application on the client side and one more application for the server side which can communicate each other with the database system. The end user has no idea about the database systems and the application server, but the database also has no idea about any other user's application. Now the three-tier architecture used in the case of the large web applications. This is the simple example of the three-tier architecture, that in the three-tier architecture one more layer between the client and server, because client directly server से communicate नहीं कर सकता, it needs some application. That's why client side applications are communicate with the server side application and provide the response. Normally the large web applications provide and use three-tier architecture. So I hope you understand the architecture of the database. See over here, in the three-tier architecture, the client cannot directly communicate with the database. It can communicate with the server and then the server communicate with the database. It's just like client applications connect with the server application and client and server communicate with each other. Same way, the client cannot connect with the database client interact with the server and server connected to the database, and it gives the response to the client again. Same way in the two-tier architecture, see over here, this is the database, this is the server, and these are the clients, client 1, 2, 3. All clients are directly connected with the server. It's just like clients are directly connected with the database system, that is a server. But there is no need some special application or server application to communicate with each other. So this is the two-tier architecture and this is the three-tier architecture. But the three-tier architecture is the best use of the large web applications. So in the database architecture help to design, development and implementation as well as the maintenance of the database. The simplest way of the database creation or simplest way of the database architecture is a one tier. In that the client and server and database all are in the same machine. But in the two-tier architecture, the database architecture where presentation layer run on the client and the data is stored on the server. Same way in the three-tier architecture is consist of the three layer, the presentation layer which contain PC, tablet, mobile, etc. and the application layer, that is the server, and the one is the database server. So there are three different architecture. In the first architecture you learn client, server and database, that all are in the same machine. So there is no need to client and server communicate with each other. Now in the two-tier, the client and server communicate with each other directly, in that the presentation layer run on the client side and the data which is stored in the server side. Same way in the three-tier architecture, it contains three layer: presentation layer, application layer and the database server. The presentation layer मतलब आपका PC, tablet, mobile जिसके ऊपर आपका output दिखेगा. Then the one is the application layer, that is the server, and your data is stored on the database server. So there are the three different architecture of the database. I hope you understand this database architecture. Okay, bye.